Hi everybody, good morning. Welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news. I hope you're all doing very well this Friday morning. Good to be back. Day off yesterday. I was in London. I'm in bloody London, aren't I? As Neil Warnock would say. But we've got lots to get into on the show this morning. Obviously, a lot of it revolves around the sale of Manchester United. Who wins as Sir Jim takes the lead again? But Qatar, well, interesting updates on them. They're not going to back down. They're not going to give up. But when is the finishing line going to happen? We'll delve into that. David Beckham has spoken about his involvement as well. Also want to talk on the Antony case. There's been some updates around Antony. Will he be facing another suspension or is he going to now be left alone to play for Manchester United? Some updates around that you might be interested in. And also, get ready for a bit of a Goldbridge rant on a Friday. I've had enough of some of the nonsense out there and it's about time we called out some of the hipsters with their little clips and they've got no idea about football and they pontificate all the time about this, that and the other. This player's finished. This is why this does that. Absolute bullshit. Time to call it out. But we'll do that in a few minutes because we're going to start off talking about the sale of Manchester United. Now, I watched the Faz show last night. I'm sure many of you saw it as well. Yesterday evening, I'm on the way back from London and I'm on the train and I'm looking at my phone and I'm seeing loads and loads of stuff about the sale about Manchester United and I'm thinking, you know what, this is the first time in weeks where we've had a sustained amount of information coming in about the sale and we've had that over the last few days. And I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to say, I don't want a high five. I'm going to say, I actually am bored of the sale of Manchester United, but it's so important you can't be bored. But the only thing that will draw me in is when there is sustained news from credible sources. And I feel that we have had that in the last few days. You know, I think there's been a lot of shit for a few weeks, but actually when you've got business outlets talking about the sale of Manchester United being followed up by, you know, people like Keegan and Jacobs and a few others, then I think generally there is and has been a shift in the last couple of weeks in relation to the sale of Manchester United. So who wins? Who wins this race? Well, above everything, the Glazers win because the Glazers are the people that are holding up this sale. They could have sold, I mean, I said it on Twitter last night, Qatar would be the owner of Manchester United right now if the Glazers wanted to sell to them because they are buying all of the club for a very fair price and it's like, bang, sold, let's get on with it. And that hasn't happened. And you've got to delve into why that hasn't happened. So the Glazers will win here. Today I feel Qataris is Oliver. The Glazers will win here because they are the people in charge. What frustrates a lot of United fans is that when it comes to this sale, and it's the same as United not hosting any of the games in the 2028 Euros, despite having the biggest capacity for a domestic club in England and Ireland, we are not hosting a game. There is just a general apathy, laziness, lack of interest and care in United from the owners. I know for a fact that there's certain clubs in the Premier League, such as Arsenal, Manchester City, Newcastle, Liverpool, that will be furious if they're not shortlisted for the Euros in the Euro 28 because it's a status thing. We've got a big ground. We've got one of the best grounds in England. And it's a status thing. But it's another example that the Glazers just don't care. They just don't care about that. It doesn't matter. They probably aren't even aware that we've not been shortlisted because they just don't care. And you cannot operate you cannot operate with anything if you just don't care. And the way the Glazers have treated Manchester United over the last 10, 15, 20 years, 25 years, is 30 years, 50 years, however long they're here, is well documented. But specifically on this sale and who's going to win, let's never lose sight of the fact that this sale could have been done in March, should have been done in the summer, and still isn't being done in October. There is only one set of people responsible for this, and it is the Glazers. The way to look at this sale of Manchester United and why it frustrates so many and why the mainstream should pick up on this instead of Ten Hag, and I will say that, all this nonsense about Ten Hag this week that we outed as bullshit, absolute nonsense about the players aren't with Ten Hag. Fair play. I think it was Sam and Beth and reporting it earlier this week, and it was absolutely spot on, verified information that source was rubbish about players turning on Ten Hag. That's not what should be the headline. The headline should be what we're talking about here, because this is what's important to Manchester United and this is what's factual. United's been up for sale for nearly a year and the Glazers still haven't sold it. In a real life term, What the Glazers are doing to Manchester United is what somebody with the power of attorney does to a sick relative. They are not giving them the medicine. They are on their deathbed and they can be cured. And all they're doing is just giving them enough to survive, but they're not giving them the cure. And that's what the Glazers are doing to Manchester United. Man United are on their deathbed. We're not going to die, but we're very seriously ill. And all the Glazers are doing is just giving us enough food and enough medicine to maintain that illness. But the cure is there, and they're going, no, we will do the cure, but we want to stay and be involved with these people even though we don't like them, or we will give you the cure, but we want ridiculous money for it. And that's the bottom line with Manchester United. And it amazes me that the mainstream cannot, one, jump on this, and two, understand this. We are owned by people who are, making our football club ill. And the cure is there and they won't provide it. And they still allow us to stay ill. And it's not acceptable. And it's very, very frustrating because the cure has been there for a very long time and they will not take it because of selfish reasons. And nobody can tell me I'm wrong about that. The Glazers, Richard Arnold, nobody can tell me I'm wrong about that. And nobody can tell you you're wrong about that. There is a cure for this football club, which is ill. And they will not take it, even though they'll get recompensed massively for it. Hi, Mark. Hope you're doing great today, says Adam. Thank you. Hope you're doing well as well. Good to be back. Hi, Mark. Sorry to go off topic, but the comments Danny Murphy made about you are a joke. Keep up the good work, says Daly. Danny who? Don't even talk about him. Who is he? Who is Danny Murphy? I mean, come on. We're on a different level to him. That's why he's doing it. He's a bloody nobody who goes on a radio show that, no one's really interested in. Let him gob off. I've played the game. I've played five-a-side, Danny. Well done. But look, let's get back to the reality. Who's going to win this race? There is a cure. Who is going to win this race? I sort of, I don't disagree with what was said on the show last night. I don't disagree with some of the comments in the chat, and I don't disagree with what some people are saying on social media. But there's two big things to say here, and there's two big options here. There's Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and there is Qatar. The big problem that you've got is that neither of these two people want to lose. Qatar will not want to lose to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, even if he's in front. Sir Jim's been in front before, and Qatar comes in with a higher bid. And I think this is all just, as I just said, it's all game playing. Now, I have heard some nonsense that you need to be careful of. I don't listen to any of this, and I know it's factually incorrect. But unfortunately, a lot of you are on social media. I'm on social media, and you do see it. You see this complete and utter nonsense from chancers who think they've got inside information. I've heard people saying, we're sold to Qatar, they're just not allowed to reveal it. It's been like that for months. They're talking absolute arse. Absolute arse. I talk to people who are close to these deals. NDAs are in place, but there's absolutely no way a deal has been done with Sir Jim or Qatar weeks ago, days ago, months ago, and it's being kept quiet. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And you need to have a word with yourself if you're reading that shit on Twitter and believing it, because it's absolute shit and they're playing you for likes, follows, and whatever else. That is not the case. The Glazers have not made their decision because the Glazers are looking for what they want. They either want this ridiculous amount of money, 6 billion quid, or preferably for Joel and Avram, they actually want to stay. So who's going to win this race? Well, Sir Jim is back in the lead. There is no doubt about that. Sir Jim is back in the lead. By all accounts, he's changed his bid again. We spoke about this 2 weeks ago. Initially, he wanted to buy all of the club. Then he wanted to buy 70% of the club. Then he was buying 50% of the club. Now it's 25% of the club. And obviously we know 25% of the club is next to nothing and will make no difference in the short term. His plan has always been to buy part of the club and then in 2 years' time or 3 years' time buy the rest of the club. But my issue with that is that you're not clearing the debt. You haven't got the money to buy all of the club now, so we're waiting 3 years for you to raise the money to buy the club when somebody can buy the club and clear the debt tomorrow. Sorry, you are not the right bid. I don't care what his plan is. I don't care whether he's a good owner or a bad owner. I don't care whether he's from Manchester. I don't care whether he supports Manchester United. Those things don't matter to me. The bottom line is, you're not buying all of the club. I don't believe you'll buy all of the club in 3 years. And even if you do buy all of the club in 3 years, there's somebody who will buy the club in 3 minutes, all of it now. Why do I need to wait 3 years for you to buy all of the club? And what happens in that 3 years? Fucking nothing. We just fail again for 3 years. And then in 3 years, if he gets hold of all of the club, we start again. And it's another 3 years. And before you know it, it's 2030 and we're still shit. So I do not want that to happen. That's my opinion. I don't care whether I'm in the minority of 5% or the majority of 99%. It makes no difference to me. I do not want Sir Jim Ratcliffe to buy the club. I think his aim is ridiculous. He's shooting arrows in a bloody hurricane, isn't he? He's just all over the place. He couldn't hit the target if he tried because he's changing his bid all the time and he's coming across as desperate. It's like the guy who wants to marry the girl and the girl doesn't want to marry them. And it's like, will you marry me? No. I'll give you £1 million. No. I'll give you £5 million. No. I'll give you £10 million. We don't have to sleep in the same house and we'll only be married for a year. No. I'll give you £50 million. We never have to talk apart from WhatsApp, but you just marry me legally. I'll think about it. You know, it's like, it's just every offer is just more desperate and giving more power to the Glazers, which none of us want. And of course, the overarching thing is that the Glazers will stay. So Sir Jim's in front. There's no doubt about that. And I think Sir Jim's always been in front, but it doesn't necessarily mean he'll win. The truth of the matter is that Joel and Avram have always wanted to stay at Manchester United. They love bleeding this cash cow. They love making money off this football club. So that's what they do. And they want to stay. And the reason that people cannot get this around their head because it makes them feel scared is that if they wanted to sell to Qatar, they'd have sold to Qatar months ago and you would be feeling Qatari because we would have been Qatari owned for about 5 months. If they wanted to sell to Qatar, it would have been done. It's a piece of piss. They've got the money. They give them the money. They walk away. They've bought the whole club. It's easy for Qatar to buy Manchester United and it's easy for the Glazers to sell to Manchester United. So why haven't they done it after 8 months? And the bottom line is they haven't done it because they want to keep exploring Sir Jim, because Sir Jim allows them to stay. But Sir Jim's deal is so messed up, it's almost, you know, it's going to take bloody ages because he's got so many hoops to jump through. He's got to please the shareholders, he's got to please the remaining Glazers, he's got to please Joel and Avram so they stay. So, and he hasn't got the money to buy all of the club. So Sir Jim's move is basically taking ages because it really shouldn't be happening. Technically, they'll find a way, but it shouldn't be happening. You know, I'm going to buy 25% with a long-term view to buy 100%. But from that 25%, 12.5% will go to shareholders and 12.5% I'll buy from the Glazers. But are the Glazers all staying, or is it just Joel and Avram? Because long term I want to buy them out and the shareholders. And it, you know, straight away I'm confusing myself, and that's the problem, and that's what's going on here. The Glazers, Joel and Avram, have always wanted to do a deal with Sir Jim because Sir Jim has always said, I'll keep you at the club. So that they want to do that. They don't want to go. The Glazers would never be going if they had them, if it was 10 years ago. If they were still taking dividends out of this football club and it was still making money, they would still be here. They don't care about the debt. Their problem is they can't afford all the costs that are required, including to the infrastructure, the loss of earnings, their stadium. They can't afford it, so they need to bring money in. And if somebody gave the Glazers, £2 billion now, they wouldn't leave. So they don't want to sell. And Sir Jim gives them an opportunity not to sell. There's a multitude of reasons why the Glazers don't want to sell. Ultimately, it comes down to money. They want to keep bleeding the club dry. And obviously, there is a very strong prediction in football in the next 10 years that there will be some sort of Super League or there will be some sort of mega TV deal, which will make a lot of money for a lot of clubs in the Premier League, potentially. So the Glazers are just hanging on for dear life. And Sir Jim is giving them the opportunity to do that. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Sir Jim gets hold of the club, that there is some sort of massive payout for whichever Glazers stay in the long term, i.e. if there's a Super League or something like that. This is just a business deal. This is just a business deal, and that's what it is. So look, I do think Sir Jim is winning the race. I do think he's in front because I think he's always been the Glazers' preferred option. But there is a flip side to that coin. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but currently Qatar supports Palestine unequivocally. I just hope that doesn't cause any protests or problems, this sacking. Well, look, this will always cause problems, sacking. I mean, I'm not here to talk about things like that and get political, not because I don't have a stance on it, or not because I don't have an opinion on it, or not because I don't think it's a massively sad world event. But we're here to talk about football. But ultimately, there was already talks about the Qatari regime before that. And as we saw, you know, there could well be issues around that, of course. And there are people who are still very much against Qatar owning Manchester United. So, look, these things are still there. They haven't done it because they're incompetent, as everyone says. We're Manchester United, says Oliver. Thank you very much for your super chat, Oliver. But I feel that with regards to Qatar and the Sajim thing, remember that this all benefits the Glazers if they then end up getting a 6 billion bid from Qatar. And I just feel that there's a very important thing to go back to from January. And I can't remember who said it. I think it was a business consultant or somebody. It might have been Sky Business. It might have been, you know, Bloomberg. But somebody said it in a well-written article. The thing that you have to remember about Qatar is, and the thing you have to remember about a lot of these, you know, Middle Eastern billionaires, is that when they want something, they tend to get it. And there's absolutely no doubt that Qatar, Sheikh Jassim, want Manchester United. And I as the title of the video says, Qatar won't give in to Sajim. And Sajim doesn't really want to give in to Qatar. So I think that the Glazers win again because they can just constantly keep playing each other, playing them off until they get what they want. And look, if this is the concern for me, Qatar have said they won't pay any more than 5 billion. But I actually think that if they want the club, they may have to do that. Because Sajim is so bloody desperate. I think his next move is, I'll just give you 2 billion, the Glazers. I don't even want any ownership. Just, you know, a Christmas card. You know, you just wouldn't put it past Sajim to go in that low. Because he's gone from 100% to 70% to 50% to 25%. And that's the problem. They are so desperate, the pair of them, to get hold of the club, Qatar and Sajim, that I just think if I was selling something and I had two desperate, if you're selling your house and you've got two desperate buyers, you don't just go, oh, actually, I just like the look of you, I'm going to go with your bid. You're going to play them out. And that's what the Glazers are doing. They're winning because every time, if Sajim and Qatar said, that's my final offer, no more negotiations, and we're not speaking to you anymore until you make a decision, then I think a decision would be made because the Glazers have to make a decision. But what's been going on for 9 months, and you have to blame Sir Jim Ratcliffe for this because he's the one who keeps changing all the time. You have to blame him and you have to blame the Glazers because every 2 or 3 months he's coming up with a new idea to get the club because he's so desperate. So this is the issue, isn't it? It could keep running on and on and on because at some point the Glazers are going to go, this is the offer that we want. And Qatar can say, look, we're not paying any more than 5 billion because it's not worth more than 5 billion. That's absolutely fine. And they are right. But when Sir Jim Ratcliffe is saying things like, I only want 25%, I'm going to give you 1.5 billion now in cash to input into the club. Well, this is the Glazers' dream. So we've only got to give 12.5% of our 69% to you, Sir Jim, and you're going to put 1.5 billion into the club. This is the problem. This is the problem. And people don't want to go that deep into it. But the bottom line is Sir Jim Ratcliffe keeps changing his bid to desperately try and get hold of the club. And, I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake from Sir Jim Ratcliffe because all he's doing is weakening his hand every offer he puts in and giving the Glazers more power. Still to stay at this football club, and it's a very depressing thought. Mark, remember the Glazers went to the PSG chairman to ask him if Sheikh Jassim could rise his bid. The Qataris are too deep in, they won't lose, says Tony. Well, that's what I was going to say because there's other stuff I want to talk about this morning. If not full sale, then United will be bust in about 2 years, with Sir Jim about 5 years full sale only, says Martin. It's an interesting concept. What do I think will happen? It's irrelevant what I think will happen on this because I'm not an expert and I can't confidently speak to you about it. My personal opinion is that I still think Qatar get hold of Manchester United because they've got the money and the wealth to just get it if they really want it. I think from a business point of view, they don't want to overpay. They're already overpaying at 5 billion. They don't want to overpay. Ultimately, I think the Glazers think they can get more money out of them, and I think that's what they're trying to do. And if they don't get the money they want, I think they're working on a deal with Sir Jim that will allow them to stay for a few more years and then hopefully cash out a bit higher when there's some sort of Super League or massive TV deal. So the Glazers are just looking at this for money. Surprise, surprise. Sir Jim is just obsessed on some sort of vanity project, which for me, I'll talk about in a moment. And Qatar probably are going to have to overpay if they want it, which I think they will. Do you think David Beckham will be involved in the sale, says Sean? Well, David Beckham's come out and said that he's got a good relationship with Qatar, but he's not actually spoken to them about an ambassador role at the moment. And some people have said, oh, yeah, people were saying Beckham's involved and he's not. You could read that many ways. You could say, well, Beckham's not had any conversations with Qatar at all. But if you listen to what he said, I know people who I think can turn United around. So he knows them and he's spoken to them. And then he said, we've not had a discussion about an ambassador role at the moment. But that's just a specific job. Doesn't mean they're not talking. And at the end of the day, I would read it like this. If you're in a relationship with somebody and you've not asked them to marry them, doesn't mean you haven't been round their house, in their bed and into the cinema with them, does it? You've got a relationship, you just not asked them to marry you yet. I don't know what's going on with Beckham is the honest answer, but I suspect there will have been discussions with Qatar because obviously he's got a good relationship with them. I just don't think they've decided on what his role will be if they get hold of United yet, which is actually probably quite an intelligent thing to do. Why would you commit to a job when you haven't even bought the club? So I would imagine that there are conversations going on there. Having Jim as a minority shareholder fixes nothing. Only ways Glazers out, says Alpha Gaming. Look, I'll say this to you. There probably will be more developments today. There might be some more developments next week. But I stick with what I've always said. If you keep the Glazers at the football club, you're an enemy of the football club. And I know that's very strong words, but if I had £10 billion and I couldn't afford to buy Man United and I gave the Glazers £2 billion for 25%, I'm an enemy of the football club. Even though I love it, I'm an enemy to all of you lot because I am not doing what needs to be done. Stepping aside and letting somebody buy all of the football club. As much as I'd love to have a stake in Man United, if my only way of doing that is by working with the Glazers, then I'm an enemy of the football club because I am keeping the people who have destroyed this football club in place. So Jim Ratcliffe's intentions might be good, but he needs to wake up and smell the coffee. You're an enemy of the football club if you work with the Glazers, and that's just a cold, harsh fact. There's no doubt about it. Can you see Beckham on the board if Qatar take over, says Adam? I can. I think if you look at the way that Qatar have run PSG, I don't think it's been run particularly well. And I don't necessarily think that if we get bought by Qatar, we're suddenly going to compete with Man City or Newcastle, because I think they're run very, very well. And if Qatar do not follow the blueprint of Man City and Newcastle and they start going down some, ex-player on the board, United way nonsense, then it might not work. It might go the same way as PSG. We'll still be in a much better position than we are now. I mean, PSG have still won league titles. But that's not a conversation I want to have at the moment. First things first is clear the debt and get a full sale with people who've got the money. But I don't for 1 minute think that if we get bought by Qatar, everything's rosy in the garden. It's a lot better, but I don't think it's rosy. It depends what their strategy is. And I don't want this, Galactico ex-player on the board sort of mentality, because I don't think it necessarily works. I want to recruit the very, very best at everything. And I think there would be a place for David Beckham, but I wouldn't want him necessarily as the CEO or as the director of football. In relation to what I think is going to happen before we move on, as I say, I think if Sir Jim Ratcliffe does a deal with the Glazers, we're screwed. We're never going to be anywhere near the top of football while that happens. But I don't think we're not going to have plenty of up and downs before that. The math for the Sir Jim deal doesn't add up. Let's say the deal happens. Who would invest in the club and what percentage would be for Sir Jim and the Glazers? Super complicated. Anke, it is super complicated because at the end of the day, he's offering money for 25% stake. If those people who get 25% stake should then take that money, where's the investment into the actual club coming from? I want to talk about Antony very quickly. What if Qatar take over the club and immediately decide to perform an open heart surgery of all aspects of the club, including firing Ten Hag, says Colin? I don't care if the new owner is Qatar and they sack Ten Hag. I don't care. I really don't care, because it's collateral. And I know that sounds really harsh because I love Ten Hag. I've got his book. That's George Best. Can't reach over. I've got his book. I love Ten Hag. I think he's the right guy for Manchester United, but I don't care if he gets sacked by Qatar. And I know that sounds really harsh, but when you're in the trenches and the shit and you're nowhere near where you need to be, sometimes to get out, you can't take everything with you. You know, if you're in a hole, sometimes you've got to lose your designer shoes. Sometimes you've got to get rid of your wallet. You know, you've got to get out that hole. And if somebody said to me, you can have Sir Jim and the Glazers and Ten Hag stays for 10 years, or you can have Qatar and Ten Hag gets sacked straight away, I will take Qatar. That's people, and that's what I'm saying. In a hypothetical, that's what I would choose. I don't want Ten Hag to go, and I don't think Ten Hag will go. I think he's the right guy, and with the right owners, I think he's the right guy. But if you're saying to me in a hypothetical, you only get Qatar, or you only get a full sale if Ten Hag gets sacked by the new owners, I would take it, because it's that old pain to gain, isn't it? I don't think Ten Hag would get sacked, and I don't want him to get sacked. All I'm saying is it's so important that United remove the Glazers that, you know, if somebody said to me, on the other hand, this is another hypothetical, if somebody said to me, you can have Sir Jim and Bruno, Rashford, Casemiro, Varane stay, or you can have Qatar and those 4 players go instantly, well, I'm going to take Qatar because I want the full sale. It's that important. You know, people talk about, people will get, oh God, that's a big statement. But what you're not thinking about is we're shit. We're a shit football club, and we have been for a decade. And, you know, you cannot be so passionate about a full sale and a restart if you're not willing to sacrifice things to get there. We are shit. So if somebody said to me, you know, you can have Qatar, but your whole squad gets sold and your manager, probably still do it. Probably would still do it, because I'm absolutely adamant that United need to hit the reset button. That's what we need to do. You do it on your Wi-Fi router, you do it on your phone sometimes. Sometimes you've got to reset and start from the start. And that's what happens. You're so right. All that matters is getting the right ownership, says Jordan. Exactly. Let me talk to you about Antony very, very quickly, and then I want to just talk about, Casemiro. Right. So Antony, I actually was speaking to Sam from the United Stand today to check some stuff out, because I saw something today about Antony's girlfriend drops case in the UK, and then I knew that it was being reported that Antony's ex-girlfriend, one of these people who are making allegations against Antony, was due into, I think it was Manchester yesterday, but UK police to give an interview. And I was like, oh, has it been dropped? And then I read it, and what's actually happened is she has done the interview with UK police, and apparently is going to do another one, but the lawyer that was representing her has now had to stop for personal reasons or something. So it's news, and it's been in the news, and it's worth mentioning, because the situation with Antony is that I think all the Brazil allegations are dealt with, and he's obviously spoken to the police in the UK, and he's not been arrested, and he's not on bail, which is why he's playing for Manchester United. There are no charges to answer at this moment in time in Brazil or the UK. So it's right that United play him. Whatever your feelings are, that is correct. He is not actually under any investigation for any criminal offence. So it's right that he plays, obviously. But what is of a concern is that one of the alleged victims has spoken to the police yesterday, and I'm concerned from my background, and I'm sure many of you can figure it out. If somebody's gone in to speak to the UK police yesterday and alleged a criminal offence, then logically you would expect there is a possibility that there will be an arrest following that and potential bail. So we could be heading back to that. I don't know. I mean, I've got to be honest, I don't really understand what's going on. Obviously I and many of you have got a good understanding of UK law, and what normally happens when people make serious allegations is that there is normally an arrest and an interview of an offender, and that could happen. And if that look, it was in the news this morning. I brought it into the news show because, and it's not going to surprise me and it's not going to surprise you, but as Man United fans at the moment, we've got a player who's on 350 grand a week who basically won't say sorry and therefore doesn't even train with the first team. We've got a player who's playing on loan in Spain because of the last 18 months of, alleged things going on. And now we've got another player that was just, wasn't playing for 2 weeks while he was sorting things out in Brazil, is playing now, but there is still somebody out there who is speaking to the police here that could lead to another. All I'm saying is, don't be surprised if in the next few days or weeks this hits the press again, and it doesn't sound like it's going away, does it? And I can't comment on it, because if I say things like I wish it would go away, that's really insensitive if there is a genuine victim in the case. But from a Manchester United footballing club point of view, it just never ends, does it? It never ends. And the reason I mention it is it was in the press this morning, so just be aware that look, something might not happen. Maybe that person's spoken to the police and the police are like, we don't think there's a case to answer here and nothing will happen. I don't know, but it is worth bearing in mind, because I think because he's back, people think, oh, that's it now, but it might not actually be the case. We'll have to wait and see. Without getting political, how do you think the current conflict in the Middle East will affect the Qatar bid? The knock-on effect is going to be huge, says Robert McCarthy. Look, I don't do politics. I often get asked on that's football, Rangers or Celtic. I will never say that. I just don't want to do politics and football. Funnily enough, I was in London yesterday having this chat with somebody, and I said, look, I have political views. I have strong opinions on things. But the minute you bring that in to football content, you are imposing your politics and views onto people who actually mainly are here for football. So it's not that I'm not sensitive or understand. I have my own stance and I have my own belief, but they're my personal beliefs. I don't need to implement them into this show. I respect a lot of what I read and see from you. We're a community, but I'm not going to go down any political route or anything like that, because it's just it's divisive. And me, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in democracy. I believe in people having different opinions. It's hard sometimes. It's really hard when you see somebody say Harry Maguire's our best centre back, but I respect it. My son's favourite player is Harry Maguire, so I'm more than capable of dealing with different opinions if they're fair opinions and not vile opinions. You're speaking about Antony or someone new? Sorry, I just joined, says Dale. Oh no, it is Antony. It is Antony. But look, with the best will in the world, there is something very serious going on in the Middle East. It's horrific. And for me, it's the loss of innocent life, and that overarches whatever side you believe is right or whatever. And that's going to have huge ramifications. We know that. If you watch the news, there's going to be huge ramifications in that area. It's very scary. It's very sad. A lot of people are going to die. A lot of innocent people are going to die. And that's very, very sad. I don't understand war. I don't understand war. I'm very into history, but ultimately we're all human beings. And I think war is a reflection of the inability to discuss and resolve without conflict. Obviously, I understand through history that war has been necessary at times, because ultimately some people are just very bad, and it's hard when you're not a bad person to understand how bad people can be, but it does exist, and it will impact the world that we live in. And bringing it back to football, will it impact a Qatari bid? Well, look, I dread to think what could happen in that area, and I dread to think what sides will be taken, and I dread to think where it might end up. And football may be a very, 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 very distant concern to what actually happens impacting on life here and everywhere else. But of course, if you are bought or owned by a club or by owners that are on a side that doesn't comply with what you think, then, or is funding a side that you don't agree with, that becomes a difficult decision for everybody. And morals should always exist in football. I'm not against somebody saying, I don't want Saudi Arabia to own my club if they're a Newcastle fan because I can't stand their human rights and what they do to people. That's absolutely fine. It must be a very difficult moral decision because you love Newcastle, but you don't like, the human rights of Saudi Arabia. And I'm sure there's a lot of Newcastle fans that don't like the human rights in Saudi Arabia, but like what's happening to their club. Some people can just shift it to the side. Great question, Michael. I don't shirk questions. Great question, but it's the great thing about football. It's an individualist choice, isn't it? And the great thing about this country is that we do have the right to protest peacefully, and whether that's about who the owners of a football club is or what your owners of your football club stand for. I just think that we have to try in life to understand other people, and we have to try in life to resist violence, because whether it's punching someone in the face or doing something horrific to somebody else, it's still violence. And I think that we're not always going to agree, are we? And I think society, I always say the traffic light system, don't I? Green and red. There's amber. I think if you can live your life in the amber zone, it's the best place to be, because you see both green and red, and you understand that you don't need to be green and you don't need to be red. You can be in the middle, and not so extreme. And I think people are so extreme in their views these days, and maybe social media's got a lot to do with that, but people are very extreme. It's either red or green. There's nothing in between. And I'm not going to talk about what I've seen this week, but on a lot of it, I'm not extreme either side. I think I'm like, that's horrific, but that's going to be horrific, and ultimately there's innocent people just dying, and it shouldn't be happening. Leon, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. Anyway, let me get back onto football. I have to say this. I have to say this. I'm going to say it, and it almost deserves its own show on That's Football, but I'm tired of it. It's been building up for a long time. You know me, I'll call out individuals if I need to, but honestly, this is a collective. It's been getting at me for ages, and it was basically the straw that broke the camel's back today. I read something about Casemiro, and it was, he's useless, his legs are gone, he's not picking up the runners, he can't pass the ball, he's got to go, he's absolutely shit. And I was like, I cannot deal with this level of disrespect, but Casemiro represents the argument, really. We have completely and utterly run away with ourselves in the way that we analyse football. You've got people who barely look like they've had a shave telling us that, for example, Casemiro is finished, or this is why this system works, this is why this system works. And look, I speak to players, I've played the game, not at the highest level, and we are probably going a little bit too far on the hipsters these days. You go on TikTok, you go on social media, these people who are, telling us about what Arteta's doing or what Ten Hag's doing or why this player is responsible. I'm telling you now, I could go live for the next 9 hours on That's Football. I could pull up all Y-Scout clips, everything like that. You could tell me a player and I will make them look shit. And we're living in a world now where that is happening on the regular. These Poundland pundits. And look, pundits for me are not people who've played the game. You know that. I think football fans know a lot more than a lot of pundits because we watch the game. But we are falling into this trap of people pontificating with their little mini clips about hipster opinions and, little screenshots of arrows and this, that and the other. And they haven't got a fucking clue what they're on about. They haven't got a clue. The reason I don't do that very often is because it's so subjective. I could do a video showing you little periods of play and I can put some arrows on it. But it's bullshit. I may as well be writing a script. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. They don't do this at the highest level of football. When Pep Guardiola analyses a game, there'll be specific areas of a game that he wants his team to improve in. But he's not sat there with Rodri saying, Rodri, you only did 72 deep completions yesterday. And if you are Rodri, you can't play a game where you go, I want to make a 98% pass accuracy because I'm just going to pass sideways. And I want 99% passes into the final third. And it's complete and utter bullshit. And what broke the camel's back for me is that there's these people saying that Casemiro's finished. Casemiro's not picking up the runners. And I'm like, I'm looking at these people. And look, this is a little bit ageist, I would admit. But they've never played the game at the highest level. and they're not in their 30s. So how do you know Casemiro's finished? And it does look, at the end of the day, that could be a 60-year-old as well. I'm not saying just because you're young, you could have a 65-year-old saying Casemiro's finished. Oh, are you living in Casemiro's head? Do you know why he's not that good this season? Is it because, is it because he's carrying an injury? Is it because he wants to move to Qatar? You don't know why Casemiro's not playing as well as he did last season. And last season he was absolutely fantastic. But I will tell you right here, right now, anybody who is saying that Casemiro is finished, fell off and done is a fucking idiot. They're an absolute fool. They've got no idea. And anybody who says that Casemiro's not picking up the runners is a fucking idiot as well. Because they've never played any level of football at all. Because that's not something that is the responsibility of one player. And it's just, it's a statement that gets thrown out. I've said it before, but I say it in a general sense. Man United are terrible at picking up the runners. Eriksen's done it loads of times this season. But it's not something that is the responsibility of one player. And I think people need to understand this from a football analyst point of view. They're doing it like they don't need to play the game. They don't need. Doesn't matter whether they're 15 or 65. As long as I've got a subscription to Y-Scout or FB Ref, I can be a football analyst. You can't. You can't. You have to understand the game. Now, you don't have to have played the game at the highest level. I mean, playing at the game at the highest level means you'll have been exposed to the best coaches. But you have to have played the game in a sense of whether it's 5-a-side, 11-a-side, pub football. You've got to understand football and play it to understand how you lose a runner, how you make these deep completions, how you are a progressive runner of the ball. Because football is the great thing about football is no 5 minutes of a game are ever the same. Have you ever thought of how many millions of games of football there are, right? Millions of games of football there has been. I'll guarantee you now, you've never watched 30 seconds of a game the same string of passes. You'll say, well, no, I have. I've definitely seen the ball around the back, be passed around the back for 30 seconds the same in 4 or 5 games in my life. And I'd say you haven't. You haven't. The way they pass the ball, it might have been the outstep, the instep, might have been their left foot. It might have been, the pass might have gone forward slightly or backwards. Every game of football, and not even 90 minutes, every 30 seconds of football is unique in every single game that's ever been. But you've got people there telling you about deep completions, picking up the runners. How can you train a player as a coach? And I know coaches, and I have done coaching. I don't know Pep Guardiola, but I know for a fact Pep Guardiola, as detailed as he is, cannot do what some of these people are doing on TikTok and Twitter, which is analyze a player with specific clips and go, that's why they're the important player. That's why they're really not important. It's just subjective bullshit. And where it gets dangerous is where it goes very viral about certain players being finished or not doing this, that, and the other. The reason you cannot pick up the runners as one player, like Casemiro, is because every single game he plays in and every minute he plays in, there is no identifiable way to pick up 2 or 3 runners. Because those 3 runners or those 2 runners will run into different areas, not sometimes because they want to, but sometimes because they're just footballers playing football. It's not a game of chess. Football is an expressive sport. Any coach will tell you this. If a player is having a bad game or they wander out of position, you can shout at them, but it's a very expressive game within the system that you set up. Not every player, even though you tell them to pass and move, will hit the pass you want. They might go backwards. I'm trying to think of the word. It's an expressive sport, basically. So all these people who are telling you Casemiro doesn't pick up the runner, his legs have gone, but he's the only holding midfielder we've got, and he can't track all the runners. It doesn't matter how fit he is, doesn't matter how strong his legs are. And I just think that I'm tired of it. I'm absolutely tired of it. I don't mind watching a goal and saying, look, Casemiro should have done better there. Or, Maguire should have done better, or Varane should have done better. I don't mind that level of analysis. I don't mind looking at, match of the day and someone going, look, on this goal, Van Dijk would have liked to have played a better pass. But the way people are, and we saw it with De Gea last year, the clips of De Gea, people are trying to build careers and they're not, I would say go and play a bit of 5-a-side. I would say go and play a bit of 11-a-side. If you want to build a career as an analyst, Stop taking clips of fucking videos and drawing pictures and lines and telling people such and such is finished, and actually get out there and touch grass, real grass. Go and play the game, because that's where you will learn about football. I played a lot of football from 6 till, probably 16. I got shin splints. I played that much football. And when I'm saying football, I'm not just talking about, playing for your school or the county or anything like that, or going to trials. I'm talking about, Saturday afternoon, your local team. I'm talking about lunchtime, 8-a-sides. It's play the game, understand the game. And you'll understand that sometimes we're really overcritical about players, and sometimes we're clipping up the wrong things and saying, look, I'm straight out of uni. I've got, I'm analytical. Casemiro here shouldn't be here. He should be there. And I'm watching it and I'm going, what the fuck are you on about? Casemiro shouldn't be here. He should be here. This guy's won multiple Champions Leagues and is one of the best holding midfielders in the last 10 years. And you are now analysing a video straight out of uni telling Casemiro he's in the wrong position. You're talking arse. You're talking arse. And also, have you ever played that position? Do you know? Have you ever realised that when you play centre midfield, you don't get to have a look at an aerial view of the pitch or from a really nice camera angle? You are absolutely vertical, and everybody else is on the same level as you. And you don't look down on the ground to say, oh, I'm positioned perfectly 10 metres from the penalty box, 10 metres from the central, perfectly centred as a CDM. It doesn't work like that because the game is so expressive. So look, it got me really angry today because it was the final one where I was just like, I'm not having this anymore. I'm not having some 60-year-old or 18-year-old or some, hipster tell me that Casemiro has fell off, finished, injured and responsible for all Manchester United's problems, because he has fell off a little bit this season. He's not to the highest level he should be, but put some fucking respect on his name. We were good last year because of Casemiro. He's one of the best CDMs in the game in the last 10 years. And whilst he might be dropping off a little bit because of age, I personally don't think he is. I don't think Bruno's good this season. I don't think Rashford's good this season. I think it's because they played too much football last year, and I think they're tired physically and mentally. And I think that's the problem. I also think that Ten Hag puts way too much work on Casemiro and overloads him with runners on the break because he's got two attacking midfielders playing in a midfield three. I think there's a multitude of reasons why Casemiro isn't playing well this season. But how can I listen to somebody, whether they're 50, 60, 40, 30, 20, 10. How can I listen to somebody tell me that Casemiro's legs have gone and he's finished as a high-level footballer when they're not Casemiro? How can they tell me that? It's bullshit. It's projective nonsense. And look, I'm very good at that when there's a match on. You know that. But I think in general we just need to be very, very careful about this obsession. I know people who spend a lot of time on their mates. They spend a lot of time on Y Scout. I'll be down the local pub and they'll be telling me about this stat, and I'll say, but what does it matter? Ultimately, it's very, very difficult. I was saying the other day that Spurs their challenge intensity and their ability to win the ball back is better than anybody in the Premier League at the moment, and that's really interesting. But Ten Hag doesn't change that by changing Casemiro. And he doesn't change that by telling his team to press better. And he doesn't change that by somebody off TikTok sending him a clip of why we're not pressing well and giving arrows. It's not that simplistic. When you play football and you coach football, it's really difficult to tell every single player to do a certain thing at the same time because they're free thinkers and it's an expressive sport. And that's why the top coaches get paid a lot of money. And that's why somebody on TikTok who's clipping stuff up thinking that they can revolutionise Manchester United haven't got a bloody clue a lot of the time. Rant over. Mark, what's your opinion on the Scotland game last night? You've called out bad refs and last night was some of the worst officiating in a long time, says Jack. If you're talking about McTominay's free kick, he bends it in from... Basically, he shouldn't have done it. It was a bit of a fluky goal, really. It's just slightly in from the touchline, and he should be crossing it in. And I think he has crossed it in on the... In fact, he's not shot, has he? He's crossed it in on the goalkeeper. And it's a good cross. And it's got the whip on it, and it's gone in on the far post. They've called it for offside. Doesn't look offside to me. They've then, I think, looked at the player that's on the goalkeeper. And you know what? to be completely fair, I would love Scotland to have got the point last night and qualified for the Euros. I think it'd be fantastic. I never want Liverpool to do well. I never want Arsenal to do well. But when it comes to the home nations, as much as they don't like England, I'd love to see. I love it when Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland and I know Republic of Ireland's not considered part of Great Britain, but I've respect. Obviously, it's very close to us and it's very close to me because I lived there for 3 years. I love it when they all qualify. And I'd love Scotland to get that point and qualify. And I really wish that goal had been given last night. But I've got to be honest. If that happened against United, I would be moaning that he's got in the way of an Arna. I mean, it's soft. It's really soft. It's softer than an ant's fart. But Scotland were a bit unlucky there. But yeah, I mean, officiating's not great, is it? Michael, love channel, toxic ever since the Glazers came. The primary root cause for the decline, full reset needed. If it means United are mid-table for a while, at least the fans have their club back. I agree. I just want us to be in a situation where, as a football club, we're actually moving, in the right direction. And I think that's a great point, that when you look at United at the moment, we're not moving, are we? I mean, I would say I personally think we're moving backwards, but we're not moving. And I know that even if we get taken over by multi-billionaires who clear the debt, we don't win the league next year. That's not what happens. It will take time. But at the moment, we're not even doing that. We're not treading water either. We're going backwards. Reese, he's not finished, but he's large reason for a lot of the goals we've conceded. If we are playing with one DM, then he needs to be Rodri level. No, it wouldn't work at United, mate. So you're wrong. I presume you've been on. I presume you're a hipster from Y Scout. Rodri would not be able to run that midfield. That's really basic football knowledge. Reese, do better. You stick Rodri into Manchester United midfields, it doesn't work. We're not Man City. We don't play like Man City. We don't play a high line like Man City. We don't press like Man City. Rodri would fall apart at Manchester United the same way Pep would fall apart at Man United. You can't just, that's a ridiculous point in my opinion. What's your opinion on Scotland? We did that one. Did you... and Bob says, Mark's crying because he knows Casemiro is finished, but his bias takes his opinion away and don't want to go in on him because he was okay last season. Bob is the classic Pratt. Basically I don't have a lot more to say to you, Bob, because you don't listen. I said during my thing that Casemiro is not playing very well this season. I said that, I've explained why I think that is. At no point have I said Casemiro has played well this season. I didn't disagree with Casemiro being subbed off last week. Casemiro may not play much for Man United anymore. He might be on the out list. I mean, look, Ten Hag can be quite ruthless. I think it'd be fucking stupid to spend £60 million on a player and then get rid of them 12 months later. But I don't think Casemiro's finished, Bob. No, I don't think he's playing very well this season. But I think these people who say he's finished haven't got a fucking clue about football, because there's absolutely no evidence to show that he's finished. Bruno's playing crap this season. Rashford's playing crap this season. Are they finished? One of them's 28, one of them's 25. So, I think people are just being a little bit ageist and deciding that Casemiro, who was our best player 4 months ago, is now finished because he's 31. But he wasn't finished when he was 31 4 months ago, did he? So I just think people are sensationalist and, too busy spending time on their computer drawing lines onto pictures and clipping stuff up to make their agenda work when they should be out touching grass, playing football with their mates and understanding what it's all about. That's how you learn about football. You don't need to have played the game at the highest level, but I think you do need to play football to understand it. And, that can be 5-a-side, like I say, 11-a-side, whatever. Get out there and play football. Stop doing screenshots to fit your agenda. Because I'll tell you this right now, right here, right now. Anything you see on TikTok, which is done by a TikTok hipster, or anything you see on Twitter, which is done by a Twitter hipster, some of it might be good. It might play to your agenda, but it's always agenda because it's so subjective. They can clip. They've got 90 minutes every game, and they might take it from 5 games. That's hours of footage where they only need 4 or 5 misplaced passes to say he's shit, or they only need 4 or 5 goals conceded where he's within 10 metres of it going and it's his problem. It's not proper analysis of an individual to clip the bits up that suit your agenda. As I say, give me a player now, I could produce something in 2 hours making them look shit. And it could be De Bruyne. I could make De Bruyne look shit. I can. The thing is, I'm right, and that's why it's dangerous, because I can literally produce a video of De Bruyne looking shit from this season. And I don't, in fact, I bet if you give me 45 minutes, I'd almost challenge myself to do it how little bit of footage I would need. You could give me a Kevin De Bruyne masterclass man of the match performance, but if you gave me 45 minutes of that game, I would find 45 seconds of clips to make him look shit. And that's what I mean. That's my issue with it. Anyway, I enjoyed that. Nice to get into it. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video. I've just got to say as well, really exciting news. I know some of you bought your tickets already. It's on December the 11th in Manchester at the Century Hall. Tickets are still available. Link is in the chat. It's Friday. You know, you might be in a Friday mood. Get your tickets to the United Stand Christmas show. Link in the live chat. Bring your friends. Looking forward to seeing you. We've got some great stuff planned for that night that's going to be very interactive. But at the moment, I'm also working on something that's going to make it very exciting. We had Ben Foster at the last one. We're working on a guest for this one as well, just to, you know, come on and do a bit of a Q&A as well. So it's going to be a great night. Make sure you get your tickets while you can. Links in the live chat. Look forward to seeing you there. Speak to you all later.